You got this, Alea. You got this. Hello, everyone. My name is Alea, and I am the host of Heavenly Conversations. This is a Christian podcast where we talk about all things that has to do with Jesus. And I am genuinely just so excited for this because this has been something that has been in the works, in prayer, for a little over a year now, and the Lord is using me as a vessel for His glory and His alone. So today I will be diving into my testimony because this felt like a very good place to start for the first episode of my podcast, so you can get a deeper understanding of who I am and why I am the way that I am. This is basically the story of how Jesus has met me in the middle of my mess and how He has completely changed my life ever since then, and I am forever grateful. I don't think I've ever actually talked about my testimony in full before, from the beginning all the way to the very end, with no holes and no hiding. Like, this is fully my story, and I hope that you guys would just receive something from it. I'll be talking about things that I've been delivered from and how God is just so miraculously working in my life right now. So, with that being said, there are some trigger warnings that I feel like I need to say. We are going to be talking about mental health, about suicide, about depression, anxiety, and lust. So if that is something that you don't feel like listening to, please stop listening. I'm not going to force you to keep listening if that's something that triggers you, but this is my story and I cannot hold back. This is what God has done in my life, and so I will say it straight up as it is. No hiding, no sugarcoating, no ifs, buts, or whens. This is my story. I'm just going to quickly pray us in before we even get started. So quickly pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I would just like to thank you. Thank you for using me as a vessel for your glory. Thank you that you have entrusted me with this burden of carrying your ministry here on earth. Father, I pray for the people listening that they would just come to realize the power of a testimony that's written by you and written with you. I pray that they would come to realize the power of even just remembering where you have taken us out of, where we used to come from and where we are now, how much we've grown, Father. I pray that after hearing my story, that they would not just sympathize with me and how I used to live, how things used to be, what I've been through, that they would pity me, but rather that they would just see your goodness and your faithfulness and your love just shining through all of this, that you were just with me the whole time. Lord, I pray that my story would not just point to me, but that it would be to you, it would just be pointing to you over and over, that you would just let every single word glorify and magnify your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Yeah, let's just get right into my story, I guess. I am 20 years old. I was born in the Philippines, and my parents had me, I would like to say, very unexpected. I don't think they were planning for a child when they had me. My dad is a Muslim, and my mom was pretty lukewarm, I would like to say. She didn't really live the Christian life. She was just surrounded by people that were Christians. So in that sense, I grew up in a home that kind of just mentioned God very often, but in different ways and very different gods. There was Allah, there was God, there was Jesus. And so at the time, I didn't really know who God was or what He is. I was kind of just playing around with the word, kind of just exploring by myself. And then after I was born, me and my mom went back to Dubai to go be with my father. And they separated when I was around 3 years old. And then they eventually divorced when I was 6 years old. I genuinely don't remember much of my life when my parents were together, since I was literally 3 years old when they separated. So that's okay. But because we lived in Dubai, I still had to see my dad every single Friday, because in Dubai, our Fridays is like North America Sundays. So in North America, we go to church on Sunday, but in Dubai, we go to church on Friday. Just like in North America, our first day of school is Mondays, but in Dubai, the first day of school is Sunday. So in that sense, it is very different. So Fridays was when everyone would go to church. And the days that I didn't go to see my dad because he was either working or I just didn't want to go see him, because I'm pretty sure I would lie and say that I was busy doing something with my family or I just wasn't feeling good or something like that. But whenever I wouldn't go see my dad, I would go to church with my mom's side of the family. I would go with her brother, so my uncle, his wife, and their kids, so my cousins. And I genuinely loved church so much. It was my favorite thing ever. Like, I just felt so intimate with a God at that point. Like, during worship, I just remember feeling so intimate. The presence was just there so evidently. And yeah, I just knew that I couldn't live without worship. When I was young, obviously, I never read my Bible. I prayed very little, but worship was something that I just couldn't live without. My mom had it playing 24/7, or my uncle would have it playing 24/7. And so I just know that worship is something that I needed at the time. My childhood was very much full of changes. In Dubai, I moved schools almost every single year. Every single year that I was in school was a different school. The longest that I was at a school was probably from kindergarten to grade one. That was the longest I was ever at a school, and that was literally 2 years. So, obviously, in that sense, I always craved friendship because I never stayed with the same friend group for so long, because then I would have to move again and again and again. And I loved people when I was young. I loved people. I was very outgoing. I talked to whoever. Like, I was friends with everyone. But moving schools every single year obviously made this incredibly hard for me. And slowly, I just stopped being confident in who I was as a person. At the time, when I was young, I would rather be with my family, anyways. So, in that sense, I was okay. I love my family so much. I did everything with them. I felt so loved and I was okay with that. And that was genuinely the peak of my childhood. I didn't have many friends, but I was incredibly satisfied because I had my family. I felt so loved by them and I was forever grateful because they gave me everything that a child needed. And then one year, kind of out of nowhere, my mom brought me to the Philippines where I thought it would be for vacation, where we were just visiting our family, but no, she left me there to stay with my grandma and my aunt, who is my mom's sister, and her cousin and her daughters. So, my cousins. My mom was working in Dubai when she left me there, and so she was obviously trying to raise money for us, which I understand now, but obviously I was young. I was around grade 4, so that's 8 years old, I believe. And I remember just feeling so alone, having people that like I just wasn't close to. I wasn't close to my cousins. I've met them once. Um, my aunt, I was very scared of her. My grandma, I just wasn't close to them. I would rather just prefer my family back in Dubai where I was just so close with them. They knew everything about me and I just felt so loved. And in that season of my life, it was genuinely like the darkest season, and I was so young. I was 8 years old, and two things crept into my life that I didn't even notice at the time. But now looking back, obviously, I noticed. Um, the first thing was lust. I was so young. It didn't start so big, obviously, because I was 8 years old. So it started with small thoughts here and there. And then as I grew older, it led to bigger things. And then it slowly started shaping how I saw myself, how I saw other people, what I thought love would look like in different shapes, forms, or sizes. Like, that was just what my mind was filled with. And this was also a time where, like, I was alone with my thoughts quite often. And so I would have very deep self reflections. And at the time, I obviously did not know how to deal with my emotions because I was just a child. And dealing with my emotions was very scary to me. And so deep down, I was so mad at my mom for leaving me. And I was extra mad at my dad who hasn't talked to me since I left. He hadn't contacted me, he hadn't texted me, nothing. And that's when the spirit of anger and the spirit of unforgiveness came, and it genuinely felt like I was abandoned by the two people who were supposed to be there for me my whole life, my parents. It just felt like I didn't have anyone, that I was abandoned, that I was left to fend for myself, to fight for myself, to take care of myself. And I was only 8 years old, you know? And so that anger was really, really deep and it took so much. Um, and that anger sat with me for like 10 years, genuinely. It was that long because I was just 8 years old. I just wanted to be a kid, but I was forced to grow up so fast because a lot of people just expected a lot from me at such a young age. And so I had to teach myself to kind of just rely on my own because I couldn't be needy because I was family, but I wasn't her child, if that makes sense. Like, obviously, she still loved me. I love my aunt very much now. We're very close. I talk to her often. But obviously, at the time, I was 8 years old. And so I didn't want to come off as needy. And so I kind of just took it upon myself to take care of myself. When you're young, no one really talks about these things. They think that, like, oh, you're a child, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, your feelings are too much for you, you're not feeling it right, or something like that. And it was just so crazy looking back now. And so obviously I carried all of these things quietly. I carried them in secret. I had lust, I had anger, I had bitterness, I had even jealousy like hidden inside of me. I had so many things. And so eventually my mom came and she brought me back to Dubai to be with her again. And I remember thinking, like, perfect. I'm home. Everything is perfect. I'm with my family that I love. I'm back with my bed. I'm back with my toys. Like, everything was perfect. And then suddenly, after just 1 week of being back in Dubai, we were suddenly at the airport again. And again, like last time, I thought it was just a vacation. But no, we were actually this time moving to Toronto. It wasn't just, oh, I'll leave you there for a year and come back. It was, we are moving there for good. And there was no warning, there was no buts, there was no ifs or whens or nothing. And that moment became, again, another deep wound inside of me and another layer of anger towards my mom because I genuinely felt like I just had no control over my life. Like, decisions were made for me, just left and right, and they never really considered my feelings, which obviously, looking back now, I was a child, I understand, but I was a child, I didn't understand, you know? And so I didn't realize it then, but all of these hurts kind of just kept piling up. I had loneliness, I had lust, anger, unforgiveness, betrayal, and even abandonment. And I brought all of those things with me, and it grew deeper and deeper every single day. And in 2014, we officially moved in Toronto. I was 9 years old, turning 10 in December, and my relationship with my mom took like a complete 180. Like, it had completely changed. Whenever we would talk, it would just lead to voices raised and yelling, and then it just wasn't a very good environment. And that summer, after we moved, my mom found a church called In His Presence. And like always, as I was young, I always loved worship. But I hated going to church. There was so many rules, there was so many do's and don'ts. Church was so long, it was like 4 hours, and I was just so antisocial after everything that I had been through that I just didn't care to make friends at church anymore. And then after a few inconsistent months of going to church on and off, they felt like I had to get baptized. And so I got baptized. And then after I got baptized, I stopped going to church. And my relationship with God was gone. It was non existent. I barely even knew who God was at this point. I heard stories of him, I heard stories of Jesus, but I didn't really know who he was and what he had to offer. And then at first, I was just going to jump from 2014 to 2020. And I was just going to say the summed up version of what happened during the hardest years of my life. But last night, as I was about to go to bed, the Lord helped me remember so many things that happened during this year that I genuinely forgot about. Like, I forgot that these things happened until I started typing, and I did not sleep. I finished at like 4 a.m. and I had to start getting ready for work at like 6. And so I was like, there's no point in going to bed. And so I just kept typing and typing. And at the beginning, I said I was not going to hide. There was not going to be any holes. And so the Lord revealed things to me that I had forgotten about, because this is a crucial part of my story. From the ages of 10 to 14, I was not okay. I went to a new school, obviously, after we had just moved from Dubai to Canada. Eventually, after a year or two, I was bullied. I remember I would just make up any excuse to not go to school, or I would tell my mom that I was sick so that I didn't have to show up that day. But obviously, the bullying was never physical, it was always more verbal and emotional. And none of my family really knew, because I didn't want to be that girl to be sorry for, you know what I mean? And so the bullying kind of just escalated, and they had a whole group chat about just me, and they would send pictures of me in that group chat. They would edit pictures of me, and they would talk badly about me, and that was all the group chat did. Genuinely, I don't even know how I remember that. I feel like this was like an insane revelation, but I genuinely forgot about this. This was like, how long ago was this? Like 9 years ago. And so I forgot about this, that they had a group chat and that they would edit my pictures and then they would send it and make fun of it. When I was 13, a year after the bullying, I hated my life. Nothing new. I hated going to school. I hated being at home. Not that home was bad and abusive, but that home was lonely in a sense. And I lived with my cousin. Me and my mom lived with my cousin and her family. There's a different cousin from the Philippines and from Dubai. This is entirely different. Um, but my cousin, who I lived with at the time, can testify about this, but I never left my room. I would always just stay in my room, because in my room, no one could hurt me. No one could say mean things to me. It was the place where I felt the most safe, and the place where I was just satisfied with just me. And this was also the time when my dad decided to show up out of nowhere after 3 to 4 years of not reaching out to me, of not talking to me. He basically just texted me, and it was going good in the beginning. I won't even lie. I missed having a father. And then eventually he kind of brought up the topic of me moving back to Dubai and staying with him. And he made me choose between my mom and my dad, which was very hard, because I told him that I didn't like Canada, but I love my mom. I love Dubai, but I'm not close with my dad. And so obviously it was very much a wrestle, very much a very hard decision. But after that, I kind of blocked him, because it felt so wrong to put me in that position, especially as my father. And around this time, I hated myself. I genuinely saw everything wrong in my body. My self-image was completely destroyed because of the things that were said about me, the pictures that were edited of me, and my mom, to top it all off, compared me to everyone and everything that she knew or that she saw. And at this time, I just wanted to disappear. I wanted to be completely off of the face of the earth. Like, I just wanted to be gone, genuinely. It got to a point where I would starve myself day in and day out. I would self-harm because I just wanted to not be here. I wanted to commit suicide time and time again. And there was also a time where I would actually write letters to my family on my phone. It was like an iPhone 4, and I was just have a notes app. I wrote letters because I just didn't want to exist anymore. I didn't want to be a burden to anyone. I didn't want to be bullied. I didn't want to feel unworthy. I was just so tired of my life, and it was really, really bad. I got so malnutritioned that I stopped taking care of myself, to the point that I actually fainted one time, and I hit my head on like a cement floor, and I got a concussion. And then my uncle, thank God for him, he had to carry me, and I woke up like 10 minutes later on the couch. And it's actually so funny looking back now, because 1 year out of completely nowhere, it just stopped. Even though it stopped, I still wasn't okay. I was still going through all of the motions because obviously it hurt me a lot. Moving on. So from the ages of 14 to 16, my hurt turned to anger. I was so angry at myself, at the world, at the people around me. If you knew me during this ages, I am so sorry because I was just filled with so much rage and so much anger. I swore in basically every single sentence. The anger towards my mom grew stronger, and I would lash out on people that weren't even my mom. I had anger towards my friends for what they did. I would push people away. I would get hurt by people, and because I would get hurt, I would hurt other people. And then on top of all of that, I was dealing with depression and anxiety. And I remember I needed help, and so I asked for help. But the response that I got was just, depression isn't real. You don't do anything that would cause depression. You're literally so young. You don't even know what depression is. How do you know if you have it? Like, what does that even mean? I would get called selfish. People would say that I just did it for attention, that I should have been grateful because I had so much more than everyone else. There were kids suffering worse than me, and I'm not thankful for what I have. And so I covered all of the hurt up, and I pretended like I moved on from all of the hurt, from all the anger, when in reality, I never did. It was just pushed down deeper. Like, this is so insane. By the start of COVID 2020, I was 16. My mental health has completely hit rock bottom. There was no more bottom than this. Genuinely, I hit the ground. I was depressed. I had anxiety attacks. I had panic attacks. I was suicidal. And again, I started self-harming. Life was just going downhill all over again. The lust got worse. The anger from before was still there, and all of my hurt and all of my anger, it just wanted to come out. It doesn't matter in what shape or form it wanted to come out. It just wanted to come out. And at some point, I got very violent, not towards other people, but I would punch walls. I would punch my bed because my anger just wanted to come out, and I would never let it out because I never wanted people to see that version of me. And then one night during lockdown, I was already at rock bottom, so I couldn't go any lower. My mom had left me to visit my family and my grandma in the Philippines because she was sick. And once again, I was staying with my aunt and with my cousin. And this was the time I started going to church more frequently. I started going with my mom before she left, and then even after she had left, I kept going to church, but I didn't really go for Jesus. I went for the company because I felt so lonely and I wanted to have people around me. And then one night, as I was just laying in bed, on my cousin's bed, I pressed shuffle on my worship playlist, and the song that played was Canvas and Clay by Pat Barrett. I think that's how you say his name, Pat Barrett. I love him so much. I love this song so much. To this day, I love this song so much. The lyrics are, when I'm doubting, Lord, remind me that I'm wonderfully made. And that lyric just stuck with me. And I remember I felt his presence so deeply in those lyrics that I just broke down in tears. Like everything that I had been holding on to, especially my self-image, things that I hate about myself, I was wonderfully made. And so I just started bawling my eyes out. And something lit up inside of me that night, and I wanted to live for God. I wanted to get to know him. And so that year, I asked for a Bible for my birthday, which is December. And from that point on, something inside me had genuinely changed. After I got my Bible, I spent every single day with Jesus. I would read his word. I would study it. I literally sat there for like an hour studying 2 verses. It was so insane. I would watch this guy from Harvest Fellowship Church, I believe. I could be so wrong. But his name was Steve. I don't remember his last name. But I loved the way he taught because he would dive into every single verse every single word. There was just so much diving in that I could never get tired of the Bible. I spent every single day with Jesus and with the Word, and I was just so filled that my cup was overflowing, and I was reaching out to my best friend. She got the same Bible as me. We were on fire together. It was insane. I started going to church every single Sunday for Jesus this time. I got prophetic words about my spiritual growth, what God had in store for me in the future, and everything that I had been through. And so I knew that that was God. So, in that sense, I started 2021 on a very strong note. I was that girl, that Christian girl. That was me. I did Bible studies with my friend every single day, and I even invited her to church with me, and she loved it. We would read the word daily, and then at some point we stopped, but we would read the word daily separately and then get together after 10 chapters and talk about what we've learned through each of the chapters. And then when we wouldn't read the Bible because we had homework or something, we would watch the sermons together. And so we were so on fire together that it made it so much easier to be on fire. And then in August, I was going away for like 2 weeks. And so I stopped reading the word and I stopped spending time with Jesus daily. Isn't it so crazy how fast things change when you stop spending time with Jesus? I stopped for 2 weeks when I had like 4 months of routine, and it was just gone. And the family of my pastor at the time were called to move to Calgary to start a church, which resulted in me and my best friend no longer going to church at all for the rest of the year, for the rest of the year after. Like, we just did not go to church. And in September, we started grade 12, and lukewarmness hit me like a truck. Genuinely, it was so easy before because I was doing school online from grade 10 to grade 12. We couldn't go outside because it was COVID. And so I had nothing else to do but spend time with Jesus, and I loved it. I had so much time on my hands. But after going into grade 12, it was just so different. Back in person, I was back hanging out with my friends every single day. We went out every single day. Like, I just had no more time, or I wouldn't force myself to make time. Around March of 2022, I started going to parties. I had my own convictions, and so I knew in myself not to get drunk, but I would still drink. I would push the limit. I would not get drunk, but kind of be tipsy in a way where I was still myself, but it was slowly not becoming myself. And I started enjoying being around people who lived way differently than I did, even though I knew that I wasn't where I was supposed to be. And then around this time, I started talking to a guy as well. And at the time, I thought that this guy would obviously lead me towards Christ, but unfortunately, that did not happen. I stopped hanging out with my friends. I started isolating myself. The lust became so much stronger, and I realized that I was expecting the love that I had been longing for from my dad to come from this relationship. And of course, no man can fill that void except for our Heavenly Father. And so that became another way that the enemy had pulled me away from God, so that he would keep me trapped in these patterns of lust, isolation, and all of these things. And so that was my cycle for the first half of 2022. Parties, lust, drinking, loneliness, name it, I did it. Actually, I never did drugs, so maybe don't name it because I didn't do it. In May of 2022, I got a call from my pastor, and in that call he said, "Alea, Toronto is no longer the place for you. You need to move to Calgary." And I answered the call and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then we hanged up. After I said those words, I was bawling in my bed, sobbing my eyes out. And at first, I wrestled with God for so long. I was like Jacob. Like, we were wrestling until daylight, genuinely, from May to July, I was so mad at God. I was angry that I had to leave my friends. I was angry that I had to leave my family again, my comfort. And to make it harder, I was just accepted to my dream school, my dream university, which was McMaster. And everything was perfect. But gladly, before, unfortunately, but now, gladly, God had different plans. And even though I wanted to stay in Toronto, God was calling me to step into something so much bigger than just myself. And after months of wrestling and months of crying, I finally said yes and obeyed God. And so on August 4, 2022, I moved to Calgary on my own with nothing but 3 boxes of my life packed and a promise from God. Ever since then, there has been a lot of lows and there definitely has been a lot of highs, but my relationship with God has been the strongest it has ever been. I'm not saying that there were 100% all breakthroughs as soon as I moved here. It was actually extremely hard. I wanted to go home every single day. I remember crying to my mom every single day, telling her to come pick me up, telling her that I made the wrong choice. And there was just so much testing and pruning and refining in the last 3 years of my life. I've been here for 3 years. That's so insane. I had to deal with confrontation. Pull up the verse. Matthew 18, verse 15. If another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. If the other person listens and confesses it, you have won that person back. But if you are unsuccessful, take 1 or 2 others with you and go back again, so that everything you say may be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. Isn't that so insane? Like, our generation is so used to talking to other people about the problems that you have with other people, when in reality, your problems is just between you and that person. It has nothing to do with anyone else. And the Bible very strictly says, when that person doesn't listen, if that person, doesn't confess the mistake, that's when you take 2 people, 2 or 3 that you trust, that person that knows that person as well, so that they're able to hold them accountable to what they just did. And that's something I had to learn during these 3 years. It was a very hard process because I hate talking about my feelings. I hate confrontation. That is not who I am as a person. I will take every hit you have to give me until there is nothing left to give. Like, that is just not who I am. And one of the other biggest things I had to learn was Galatians 1:10, where I had to learn how to stop people pleasing. Oh my gosh. That is one of the biggest things ever, because I always live for the approval of men, mere men. Let's read the verse. Galatians 1 verse 10 says, obviously, I'm not trying to win the approval of people, but of God. If pleasing people were my goal, I would not be Christ's servant. Like, are you serious? As a servant of Christ, everything that I do, not everyone will approve. Like, they hated Christ. You think everyone's gonna love me? Ugh, that was something I had to learn. It was so insane. Especially 2024 and 2025, God had to take me through the process of pruning, refining, rebuilding my foundation, learning how to be a daughter when I was barely a daughter my whole life. I had to take care of myself. Learning how to trust a father to take care of me was so hard, genuinely. And there was just so many other things. And I remember just always feeling at my lowest. Like, I could never, ever get out of this pit. But I trusted God enough to obey him. And I trusted him enough to move to the place that he called me to move to. But I didn't trust him enough to deliver the promises that he had promised me. During my trip back to Toronto for Christmas in 2023, my mom and I went to Dubai for New Year's, so January of 2024, to visit our family. And after much deliberation with my grandma, she told me to see my dad. And so I saw my dad after 10 years of not seeing him. And the only thing that he had to say to me was, "What happened to you? How did you let yourself get like this? Why don't you text me? Why don't you contact me? You're so big now," in a bad sense, not like you're grown up, you know? There was a few other things, but I don't think it's appropriate to say. And so a part of me was obviously very happy to see my dad. It's been 10 years, but also a part of me was just so mad that that's all he had to say to me. He commented on my appearance and he blamed me for not talking to him, but I was angry because a phone works both ways. And obviously, he didn't contact me either. And so after that, he said that he would keep in contact with me because he missed me and I was his daughter. But after I left Dubai, we talked for a week and then we stopped. And then that whole year, I just went through a season of generally refining myself and my friendships and just sharpening those friendships. I became so much closer to a lot of people in 2024, and it was all God ordained. And he was preparing me for a ministry that was bigger than myself, genuinely. And so when I went back to Toronto for Christmas again in 2024, I remember just being so excited to come back to Calgary. Calgary is my promised land. Genuinely, although I miss my family, although I miss my friends, although I miss the comfort of my bed, my house, my room, I, ever since then, I never wanted to delay what he had in store for me anymore. I didn't want to delay it. I wanted to be fully in. I couldn't be half in, half out. I wanted to be fully in. A little after I had come back and I slowly started walking into that promise instead of just being in the place he had for me, things eventually started looking up. And this year alone, 2025, from February to now August, I am serving as a leader at my church. I am teaching Sunday school. I serve in so many different ministries, literally, like, name it. We have that ministry and I am in it. And God is just working. I'm even doing Bible studies with my friends from back home, from friends here, even with this podcast. Like, I felt God telling me to do this in 2024. Yeah. But I just kept pushing it because I felt like I wasn't the perfect Christian and I just had so many things wrong with me. I wasn't really deep in my faith like I was, but I just felt not right. I felt like I wasn't equipped for this, that there were so many people better than me. And after I fasted and I really spent time consecrated with God and just focusing on Him and nothing else, no worldly like media and nothing like that, like I realized that I will never be the perfect Christian. But He knew who He called and He called me. And so this year, my dad reached out again after my grandmother had passed away. He reached out with so much anger and so much manipulation, gaslighting, like it was just insane. And I wanted to go off on him so bad. If you guys saw the wrestling, oh my gosh. I obviously did not go off on him because God was teaching me to heal in this season, to truly heal and to truly take it from the root and not just take the branches and clean it up, but to truly dig it from the root, take it out and plant a whole new seed. It took longer than I wanted, but God was so careful with me, and I'm forever just so grateful because He had to deal with my unforgiveness, with my anger, with my jealousy, with my lust, with the feeling of abandonment, like, and that took a long time. And now I am just so proud to say that God has healed me of literally everything. And I have forgiven my parents. I text my dad like normal. I have so much grace and understanding towards my mom and everything that we have been through. Because if you think about it, forgiveness is a daily choice. Like, it's a daily battle where, like, you have to choose to forgive that person. Even if they sin against you again, you have to choose to forgive them because that's what God does for us. Like, who are we to judge people and to not forgive people when we sin against God every single day, genuinely? But that's a topic for another time. And now, like, all I want to do is tell everyone about how Jesus has saved me, how he has healed me, and there's just so much I can't wait to talk to you guys about because I'm just a girl that was given the space to talk about Jesus, talk about scripture, to talk about life, to talk about other people's testimonies, my testimony, and everything else in between. And I am genuinely just so excited for what Heavenly Conversations has in store because God is in this place, y'all. And I'm just so in awe because I've never talked about my testimony in full before. And I have healed because I did not cry once, did not get angry once. This has been just so beautiful being able to look back and remember how much God has truly done for me. And as I was writing this, Exodus 13, 3 came to mind. This was basically after the Israelites had left Egypt. This is the day to remember forever, the day you left Egypt, the place of your slavery. Today, the Lord has brought you out by the power of his mighty hand. Can we just sit in that for a second? He wants you to remember your lifestyle, how you used to be and how you are now. Because it's so important to take the time and truly remember what God has brought you out of. Like, you will never realize how much you have changed until you write down your testimony and see what you started with and see where you are now. It's truly insane. So, with that being said, thank you to everyone who took the time to just listen to the first official episode of Heavenly Conversations. This week, I do want to encourage you guys to actually take the time out of your day to write down your testimony with Jesus, because if you pray, he will reveal things to you that you have forgotten about, but they are truly very important to your story. And with that being said, thank you guys for being here, for listening, and for those of you watching, thank you so much. I hope that this episode was a great introduction of who I am, what God has done through me and in me, and what is yet to come with this podcast. So God has such big things in store for Heavenly Conversations, and I am just so beyond grateful. And I love you all so much. Have a blessed week. I will see you all next time. Bye bye. Love you all. Mwah.